was made flesh
and dwelt amongst us.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners.
Pray for us, O Holy Mother of God,
that we may be made worthy of the promises of Christ. Pour forth, we beseech you, O Lord, your grace into our hearts, that we, to whom the incarnation of Christ, your Son, was made known by the message of an angel, may by his passion and cross be brought to the glory of his resurrection, through the same Christ our Lord. Amen.
RPN Radio Philippines Network, Radyo Ronda DXKS Surigao, member kapisanan ng mga broadcaster ng
3 billion pesos were wasted, most of them just expired. And trending online, Korean girl group Blackpink drops a sneak peek of its next single, Pink Venom. President and Agriculture Secretary Bongbong Marcos admits the country might, after all, need to import sugar by October, but less than the volume in the supposed illegal sugar importation order. CNR Kanghel reports the embattled former agriculture official behind the order faces lawmakers.
Former Agriculture Undersecretary Leocadio Sebastian defends his order to import 300,000 metric tons of sugar after Malacanang called his move illegal. Facing members of a joint House panel, Sebastian said sugar supply is running low based on government data. He said there's a supply shortage of over 500,000 metric tons of sugar yearly. Sebastian signed sugar importation order number 4 without President Bongbong Marcos's approval. Marcos should have given the go signal for importation as the concurrent Agriculture Secretary and Chair of the Sugar Regulatory Board.
I signed the document based on the data presented to me, based on the data presented by the Sugar Regulatory Administration. There is a clear indication of the rapidly diminishing supply of sugar. Current supply is projected to run out in August 2022, this month, and end of crop year 2021-2022.
Sebastian, however, admitted his order was against the administration's plan. He resigned last week as Malacanang announced an investigation on the matter.
I immediately resigned when I knew the President disapproved my action.
The Samahang Industriya ng Agrikultura or SINAG says the sugar supply needed by the country is not as big as what Sebastian claimed. SINAG specifies nearly 170,000 metric tons of sugar have been imported this year, tripling the imported volume in 2021. The group is also questioning why Sebastian didn't inform Marcos about the importation order when they actually met at the palace last week.
Nalaman din namin ang shortfall lang is around 100,000 metric tons. Bakit nag-issue kaagad ang SRA approval na 300,000 metric tons? Bakit hindi in-inform ang presidente natin na pumirma siya in behalf of the president? Sa tingin namin may tinatago and dapat malaman natin.
On his vlog, Marcos announced his plan to import sugar by October. But the president says the volume will not exceed 150,000 metric tons or half of what regulators wanted to import.
Habang ang production pa natin ay inaayos pa natin, napipilitan tayo mag-import, ngunit tiyakin natin na yung importation hindi naman sobra. Hindi sobra-sobra dun sa pangangailangan. At meron namang supply dito sa Pilipinas.
Some lawmakers now urge Sugar Regulatory Administration officials who signed the importation order to resign out of delicadeza. CNR Kanghel, CNN, Philippines.
The House Committees on Good Government and Public Accountability and Agriculture and Food will hold another hearing on the sugar importation mess on Thursday. Another signatory of the Sugar Regulatory Administration Board's order to import 300,000 metric tons of sugar has resigned. Roland Beltran submitted his resignation to Executive Secretary Vic Rodriguez on August 4th, citing health reasons. The letter stated, quote, This is without prejudice to any investigation that may be conducted in connection with the importation order. Beltran was among the 4 signatories of the controversial memorandum. As a representative of sugar millers, he explained his vote was conditional, subject to compliance of the provisions of laws, rules, and regulations and the internal processes of the SRA. Meanwhile, President Marcos taps a former agriculture chief as his undersecretary Domingo Panganiban took his oath of office on August 12th. Panganiban was a presidential assistant for agriculture for the late former President Fidel V. Ramos and was later appointed agriculture secretary during the Estrada and Arroyo administrations. The beverage industry also calling for the urgent importation of premium sugar. Rafael Alunan, who works as vice chairman and independent director of Pepsi Cola Products Philippines, in a Facebook post says the industry will run out of premium sugar needed for bottling carbonated soft drinks by September. Alunan cites 2 factors. One, he says, the continuing supply shortage of domestic premium sugar, which is separate and distinct from raw sugar, and another, the delay in the approval and documentation processes of the second batch of imports required by the beverage industry. Alunan recommending the President and the Executive Secretary to approve their request not later than Tuesday, August 16, that's tomorrow, concurrently signed by the Sugar Regulatory Board, to avoid what he calls a potentially self-inflicting disaster. Otherwise, the former senatorial candidate says bottling plants could experience production downturns and labor layoffs, and government will have lower tax collections and face diminished investor confidence. In other news, almost 20 million Filipinos live in poverty. The numbers swelled in 3 years from 2018 to 2021. Paige Javier gives us a deeper look.
Bad weather is not an issue for Leila Tambogon as she prepares to sell vegetables. Income from her livelihood would help her construction worker husband tide over the family needs. She's thankful for the cash aid from government, but her family of 5 needs more to survive.
Makaraos araw-araw na pamumuhay. Kaya dahil mahirap talagang buhay ngayon, lahat po ginagawa para makaahon.
She says the health crisis has made things difficult, but the prices of basic goods are an added burden. Numbers from the Philippine Statistics Authority show more Filipinos joined the ranks of those living in poverty in 2021 from 2018. The percentages rose from 16.7% to 18.1%, or nearly 20 million people last year from over 17 million 3 years ago. Socio-Economic Planning Secretary Arsenio Balisacan blames the lingering health crisis.
Restrictions on mobility and low earning capacity of poor households due to limited access to regular and productive jobs made the lives of Filipinos difficult.
Economic managers aim to cut the poverty rate to an ambitious 9% in 2028, the year the administration ends its term. They plan to focus on job creation. Balisacan says more Filipinos will get out of poverty as the economy reopens. But while there is optimism, the Social Welfare Department admits bringing the poverty level down is challenging. The agency earlier identified over 5 million poorest families, higher than the over 3 million identified by the statistics body.
The marching order of the secretary is to identify, to make sure that these 2 findings, or poverty incident report will really work hand in hand to identify these poor individuals, and of course to match them with the programs of the government.
The DSWD says it will review programs and tap other agencies to help the poor.
Hindi lang naman assistance ang pwede natin ibigay sa mga kababayan natin na ito. Kailangan nating mabigyan din sila ng opportunity sa pagtatrabaho.
The agency is also reviewing the list of conditional cash transfer program beneficiaries. But for struggling people like Leila, she hopes the cash aid will come sooner than later.
Sana yung mga bilihin bumaba na. Tapos sana may dumating pang tulong.
Paige Javier, CNN Philippines.
More stories ahead. Authorities reimpose the expanded number coding scheme in Metro Manila ahead of the reopening of classes next week. And more U.S. lawmakers arrive in Taiwan barely 2 weeks after House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit. Keep it here on Newsnight.
MX3 dahil ito ay napatunayang may alpha, beta at gamma mangosteen. MX3 capsule helps avoid pain discomfort para iwas sakit. Tested and proven na low sodium, cholesterol-free at fat-free. Dito ako sa tunay, natural at original. MX3.
Mahalagang paalala, ang MX3 capsule ay hindi gamot at hindi dapat gamiting panggamot sa anumang uri ng sakit.
Mula sa pinagkakatiwalaan ko sa kusina, Pure Foods Ready to Eat Caldereta. Expertly prepared, kaya tiwalang easy, saucy sarap in a few minutes. Tiwalang quality time, laging made easy. Pure Foods Ready to Eat.
Life is many things. It's messy, but the kind of mess we love. Sometimes it's predictable, and sometimes it isn't. But there's always a way. And it's full of surprises. Introducing the next-gen Ford Everest. Life is yours to master.
Friends, try nyo to. Vet-approved Nutri-Chunks in lamb flavor. With active boost and prebiotics na pampalisto. Made with real lamb goodness. With essential nutrients to help keep them strong, healthy and happy. Listo, ganado sa Nutri-Chunks.
Red Horse Beer. Ito ang tama. Sarap ulitin ng lakas ng tama pero di wasak.
Today we announced our Daikin Air Solution Shop. Daikin Air Solution Shop is the front runner of all of other dealers. They are the solution provider for consumers. Then they can experience the most advanced air conditioning there. Also, we are now supporting their design and engineering capability. So that's why all of the customer problems they can solve. Our current 5 air solution shop is RGCA in Quezon City, PVS Batangas, Hope Genesis in Laguna, Quick Serve, Davao, Air Connects Cavite, and another 2 coming soon in Parañaque. One is Rosarito, another one is Arcde. When customer visits Air Solution Shop showroom, they can experience internal environment quality improvement. They can get experience of how to improve interior environment quality. If customer want to improve your house and your shop or even restaurant air quality, please visit our Air Solution Shop or please visit their homepage.
Welcome back to CNN Philippines. The expanded number coding scheme is back in Metro Manila today. The traffic policy prohibits vehicles on the road during the morning and evening rush hours on certain days based on the last digit of the license plates. George Cahilas tells us how day one went.
MMDA personnel were early in their posts along EDSA to implement the number coding scheme. That's from 7 to 10 a.m. and from 5 to 8 p.m. One by one, authorities flagged down violators. For now until Wednesday, they will just be reminded of the policy. But starting August 18, citation tickets will be issued against violators.
Ma'am, alam nyo na ba na merong implement na ngayon yung number coding?
Apa.
So, well, bakit kayo pa rin lumabas?
I know dry run lang today eh.
Yes,
Kakalusot pa sana.
Pwede ko kayong pakasuhan ho. I mean, new director tayo, mag-uusap tayo na maayos. Pero ito, paparahin nyo ako tapos ihaharap nyo ako sa camera.
I'm sorry po pa, but this is also part of our public information.
A private vehicle driver was castigated after he showed a placard saying that he has a project under the Transportation Department.
Will accepted talaga kayo sa number coding? Sinabi sa inyo? Okay. Sino po nagsabi siya? Company? May mapakakita ba kayong papel na in-accept kayo? Actually, wala.
While TNVS drivers are exempted from the policy, the MMDA still warned this driver after failing to show documents that will prove his claim.
Dapat naman talaga, dala mo yan eh. Pwede ka namin ikuloro pag hindi mo dala. Alam mo ba yon? Yes, sir. Alam mo yon, di ba? So,
napurgat lang nung naglinis ako ng sasakyan.
Kaya nga, exempted kayo sa number coding. However, you need to show your provincial authority.
Violator of the number coding scheme has to pay a 300 peso fine. But if a driver is apprehended thrice in 1 year, he or she needs to undergo an MMDA-sanctioned seminar. George Cahiles, CNN Philippines.
Good news for motorists. Another round of pump price cuts will take effect tomorrow. Oil firms will reduce diesel prices by over a peso per liter and 10 centavos a liter for gasoline. Expect cheaper kerosene as well with the 45 centavo per liter rollback. Prices of diesel and kerosene have been going down for the past 6 weeks. This is the second consecutive week for gasoline. Some 9 out of 10 47,000 public schools are expected to hold face-to-face classes when the academic year begins next week. As part of its Oplan Balik Eskwela program, the Education Department has launched a command center that will respond to complaints and requests. DepEd also coordinating with other agencies, including the Health Department, which is educating parents, students, and teachers about the importance of COVID-19 vaccination. But for the Alliance of Concerned Teachers, preparations are lacking. Its survey this month shows 7 in 10 teachers believe government action is not enough to make sure classrooms budget for health protection and clear guidelines are enough. COVID-19 updates now. The Health Department confirming that tens of millions of vaccines have expired. What does the government plan to do to avoid more wastage? Amor Santos reports.
More than 20 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines were wasted as of August 12, according to the Department of Health. That's a wastage rate of 8.42%, meaning it doubled over the last 2 months. At an average of 500 pesos per dose, Senator Risa Ontiveros says it's like throwing away 10.33 billion pesos.
At this rate, Mr. Chair, by October, lalampas na tayo sa threshold ng WHO na acceptable vaccine wastage limit na 10%. So we might have accumulated vaccines faster than we could administer them.
DOH data shows the bulk of the wasted vaccines, or 19 million doses, have expired. Others were damaged by operational issues. According to Officer in Charge Maria Rosario Vergere, those that expired were from donations and procurements made by local government units and the private sector. None were from the purchases made by the national government. And the COVAX facility already committed to replace all wasted vaccines, granted that the new shots will be administered properly. Vergere adds the country will not buy any more doses this year and focus on using up the remaining stock.
We're targeting that we may be able to reach at least 50% of our eligible population for first booster by October 8. And if we are going to be able to do that, then we are on the track of consuming all of these existing vaccines that we have right now.
To date, more than 90% of Filipino adults have been vaccinated against COVID-19, but only 21% got their booster shot. The DOH attributes low booster coverage to overconfidence in the primary shots and concerns over side effects. Meanwhile, health reform advocate Tony Leachon suggests a number of waste-proof measures, including setting up a deadline for vaccination.
Siguro ho, next 6 months, yung ayaw na po, hindi na natin mapipilit. Pero at least makatarget tayo ng 50% para tayo maprotektahan.
Vergeire says the DOH did not recommend lifting the state of calamity declaration, but President Bongbong Marcos can do so if the country has a stronger wall of immunity. Amor Santos, CNN Philippines.
With only 1 week to go, an infectious diseases expert seeks to ensure the safe reopening of classes by pushing for mandatory vaccination in schools across the country. Catch the full interview of Dr. Jean Solante of the CNN Philippines special presentation, COVID-19, Addressing the Educational Crisis. That's tonight at 8 p.m., hosted by our senior anchor, Pinky Webb and Paolo Abrera. Over in Taiwan, another U.S. congressional delegation has arrived to reaffirm, quote, U.S.-Taiwan relations. The visit comes just days after China held military drills around the island in apparent opposition to U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's Taipei trip. Our Tristan Adalo reports from Beijing.
China will take resolute countermeasures to defend its territory and sovereignty following the visit of U.S. lawmakers in Taiwan. Beijing sees this as a provocative move on the part of the U.S. and an interference in the internal affairs of other countries. The Taiwan Foreign Ministry has welcomed the second high-level group from the U.S. on Sunday, led by U.S. Senator Ed Markey and 4 House lawmakers. The delegation will meet with senior Taiwan leaders to discuss the future of U.S.-Taiwan relations, including regional security, in their 2-day visit. But China firmly opposes this visit to Taiwan and any form of official relations between the two. Chinese embassy spokesperson in Washington, Liu Pengyu, says the U.S. Congress should act in accordance to its One China policy. Beijing adds that the U.S. does not want to see stability in the Taiwan Strait, and somehow its move is further stirring up confrontation in the area. For his part, Philippine Ambassador to the United States Jose Manuel Romualdez hopes that U.S. President Joe Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping will hold more dialogues to resolve the increasing tension in Taiwan.
There is that push and pull going on between the United States and China, and we're the ASEAN community. All the ASEAN members, all 10, have asked that both China and the United States bring down the tension, because obviously we're all going to get affected by whatever happens there.
Over the weekend, the U.S. reiterates that they are committed to the One China policy and they do not support Taiwan independence. Washington also calls for peaceful resolution in the Taiwan Strait. It remains to be seen on what kind of countermeasures China will carry out in the coming days. But recently, Beijing launches a series of military drills around Taiwan Island in what was a showcase of its combat capabilities. Tristan Udalo, CNN Philippines, Beijing, China.
Up ahead, the Cine Malaya Film Festival ends with a new list of winners, and Aaron Black lifts Meralco to force Game 7 in the Philippine Cup semifinals, while TNT punches its ticket to the championship round. You're watching CNN Philippines.
Chicken daw kay TJ din? Walang duda na ang tender, ang juicy, best tasting chicken hotdog talaga. Chicken ang desisyon. Kids can tell, best tasting ang TJ chicken dog.
It can be dangerous out there. Buti na lang there's locally super fruits. Para sa akin, super nutritious, super delicious. All super fruits contain more antioxidants than your average fruit. Super fruit for a super you.
We are here today to celebrate the launch of True Life UK's Wealth Farmland. True Health Farm Love is the newest offering of True Life that protects the modern Filipino family. We're really talking about True Life UK trying to promote financial inclusion, and for that, we focus on the family. For the modern Filipino family, it's perfect because naman, family is very important to everyone. And we make sure that we have our own family and extended families, any family we love, whom we like to take care of, especially if they have any critical illness. And that's why True Health Farm Love is there, wherein the benefit can be shared by 4 family members. What we want people to understand is that there's a product out there that can take care of their family, whatever type they are, be it common law, same-sex, or adopted families, and also, of course, definitely the traditional families that we have. This is one way for True Life UK to be able to cover as much Filipino families there are, and therefore we have Ben and Ben because we found them fit in terms of being able to portray the different kinds of families today. They are diverse, they are young, and they have music that appeals across generations. And with that, we'd like them to appeal to every different kinds of family out there and help carry out the message of True Health Farm Love.
Welcome back. Sports news now. The TNT Tropang Giga are heading back to the PBA Philippine Cup Finals to defend their title. Tropang Giga beat the Magnolia Hotshots in Game 6 of the semis at the Araneta Coliseum in Quezon City on Sunday, 87-74. TNT's Jason Castro sizzled with a game-high 26 points. For the championship round, Jason told CNN Philippines Sports Desk what TNT is keeping an eye out for with the other possible finalists, San Miguel or Meralco.
Actually, both teams naman they present different problem, especially yun nga San Miguel kasi ang dami nilang guards, si Junmar. So Meralco naman almost same lang din yung mga guards nila, mga pesky defender din at the same time. Yun nga ang galing nila mga pumost up. Siguro for us to win, yun nga yung maging focus namin is yung team namin kung paano namin makapag-execute. At the same time, yung defense namin kasi doon kami din nananalo eh.
And the semi-finals continue for Meralco and San Miguel after the both stunned the Beermen in Game 6, 96-92. Meralco was down by 10 points in the last 4 minutes, but Aaron Black sparked Meralco's endgame takeover. AB scored the boats' last 11 points. Game 7 happens Wednesday, 6 p.m. Over in the Premier Volleyball League, the Creamline Cool Smashers emerged victorious again, sweeping King Whale Taipei for the Invitational Conference crown on Sunday at the Mall of Asia Arena in Pasay City. The Cool Smashers avenged their only loss of the semis against the lone foreign squad in the event. And Filipino-American NBA player Jalen Green made his way to his mother's home province, Ilocos Sur, for the first time. Giving back was part of his agenda as he shared his talents with young athletes through a short basketball clinic at the Kawayan Community Center. Green left the country yesterday. More Pinoy talent, but this time in cinema. The top honor at this year's Cinemalaya Independent Film Festival went to The Baseball Player. The Best Film awardee tells the story of a 70-year-old Moro soldier who pursues his dream despite an all-out war in his hometown. It also won Best Actor, Best Screenplay, and Best Editing. Maan Asuncion Dagnyalan's Blue Room was another big winner, bagging 5 awards. These include Best Director and the Special Jury Prize. The movie is about an indie band arrested for drug possession who must decide between their principles or their freedom. K-pop fans are raving on social media as Blackpink releases a new teaser for their next single, Pink Venom. Rosé, Lisa, Jisoo, and Jennie are dropping their album Born Pink this September. Take a look at the teaser for the pre-release single. Blackpink's world tour begins this October with a stop in Manila set for March 25 next year. And that is it for tonight. Join me again on News.ph at 7 p.m. I'm Pio Ontiveros for Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines.
Kini ang simbianan sa RPN, Radio Philippines Network, DXKS. DXKS 1080. Ang inyong Radio Ronda. 5,000 watts. Nagsimbiya sa ikatulong andana sa UFCO Lim Building, Borromeo Street, Dakbayan sa Surigao. RPN, Radio Philippines Network, DXKS 1080. Ang inyong Radio Ronda.
On a warm day or after an intense workout, many of us may experience sweating a lot. Sweating is part of your body's way to adapt to your core body temperature. But for others, this can be a regular occurrence even without physical activity. It's called hyperhidrosis, and it can trigger anxiety and embarrassment for those who experience it. On the program today, we'll talk more about this condition, why it happens, and how best to manage it. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and welcome to MedTalk Health Talk on CNN Philippines. If you experience constant sweating even without anything triggering it, you might have a condition called hyperhidrosis. Our guests are here today to tell us more about this. With us is Dr. Melissa Pasion Dabao. She is the chairman of the Department of Dermatology at the Asian Hospital and Medical Center. We're also joined by Dr. Allen Aguinaldo Cabrera. She is a procedural dermatologist from the Medical City. We sweat when we feel hot, when we walk, or even when we eat spicy food. Now, it's a normal and actually a necessary part of our life. Now, I'll start the conversation first with Dr. Melissa. Tell us more about the importance of sweating.
What's important is we have to maintain our body temperature. So either we have a core body temperature. So if ever there's a discrepancy in it, if it's too high or too low, our brain will signal something to our body that we have to maintain it. If that happens, that's if the body temperature is increased, so the brain will tell us to lower it down. That's why we sweat. And if ever naman it's too high, you'll have shivering when you feel cold.
So sweating is actually part of the normal process of our body in order to keep our body temperature at its optimal temperature. When we feel hot or during exercise, our muscles heat up, so we perspire even more. Now, Dr. Allen, what would happen if we didn't sweat? Is there a condition actually that preempts a person to not sweat at all?
There are instances wherein there's a buildup of increased temperature. And so if there is increased temperature, there is what we call the heat stroke. First, it starts with heat fatigue, wherein there's increased temperature and there's beginning a CNS dysfunction and later on collapse. No?
Just as not sweating would pose some problems, too much sweating can have some effects on our body as well. Dr. Melissa, let's talk about hyperhidrosis, the true definition of this. How does this differentiate to someone na pawisin lang, who just sweats a lot?
We have 2 to 4 million sweat glands, no? So they're saying we produce sweat like 10 liters a day. So that's the normal. Now for excessive hyperhidrosis, as they call it, excessive sweating, and which will disrupt this what is physiologically necessary to maintain the core temperature, that's what they term it as hyperhidrosis.
Now, Dr. Allen, are there several types of hyperhidrosis? Could you tell us the difference between these?
There is what we call the primary hyperhidrosis. It occurs during childhood and it's genetic. It has a strong family history. And so usually it's aggravated by emotional stimuli if they feel embarrassed, and usually occurs on the palms, the soles, the axillary area. Now the secondary is actually attributed to medications that are given, for example, antipsychotic drugs or even antidepressants. Now that will also trigger excessive sweating. And so under the secondary is the systemic disorders like diabetes or even hyperthyroidism or tumors like lymphomas and pheochromocytomas. Now, all these kinds of tumors can also attribute to excessive sweating.
Which one is the more common one to happen, especially here in the Philippines? Is it the primary or the secondary type?
It's really the primary, and most of us dermatologists, we only see localized hyperhidrosis, particularly on the armpits, no, the axillary area, or sometimes or the palms and the soles.
Now, Dr. Melissa, talking about the primary hyperhidrosis, aside from sweating a lot, and we'll talk about some of the social impact of this later on, but meron bang masamang nangyayari sa katawan kapag napapawisan tayo ng sobra-sobra?
The problem that I see is really more the quality of life and the severity of the hyperhidrosis, how they affect how they work or how their social interaction with people. That's really more the problem for the patients, especially if they have excessive sweating.
Please tell us more about this. How so is the quality of life changed, Dr. Melissa?
Yes, actually I have patients, especially in the corporate world, where they really have to wear corporate attire, and if they have excessive sweating, especially on the axillary, it really bothers them, and to the point that some people, they don't also go to work. So that's why they consult us if we could address that problem.
Dr. Allen, are there beginning symptoms of someone with hyperhidrosis?
When they get embarrassed or frustrated or stressed out, it comes out usually on the upper lip, the axillary area, the palms, and the soles.
Now, Dr. Allen, with excessive sweating from hyperhidrosis, are there other symptoms from the body, excessive odors? Does this follow as well?
Yes, especially on the axillary area, because these are occlusive areas. And then later on, if it's very occlusive and there's so much sweating, it's also prone to fungal infection, no, that can also smell, no, like we have the tinea pedis, the one on especially on the toe webs or in the axillary area.
Now, there are some factors that might make you more vulnerable to the condition. Now, we'll discuss these causes when we return. And later on in the show, we'll talk about how people living with this condition can best manage the physical as well as the mental challenges that come with it. Keep it here on MedTalk Health Talk, only on CNN Philippines.
Sulit to win it, Mr. Luis Manzano.
Tanong ng bayan, bakit sulit ang BioFlu? And the top answers are dahil kaya ang flu, lagnat, sipon, headache, body pain, ubo from post-nasal drip.
Ang dami!
Teka, may pahabol pa. Sore throat.
Sulit!
Winner ka sa BioFlu. Sulit dahil kaya all. Babangon ka sa BioFlu. Unilab yan. Phenylephrine HCl chlorpheniramine maleate paracetamol is the generic name of BioFlu. If symptoms persist, consult your doctor.
Protektahi ang imong mga mata batok sa delikado ug makadaot nga ultraviolet nga silaw sa adlaw ug uban pa. Pinaagi sa pagsulob og eksakto nga prescription sa antiyohos o antipara. Likay ang mga simptomas sama sa hanap nga pananaw sa layo o duol nga basahon, sakit sa ulo ug uban pa nga makaapekto sa atong kahimsog nga ang hinungdan depekto sa atong mga mata. Alang sa kumpleto nga primary eye care, contact lenses, fashion eyewear, computer eyeglasses, sunglasses, accessories ug uban pa, adto kita sa AG Buñuel Optical Clinic. Ang AG Buñuel Optical Clinic nagpahinumdum kanato nga ang kahimsog sa atong mga mata usa ka prioridad nga angay ipa-check up kausa matag tuig aron pagsiguro nga luwas kita sa piligrong mga sakit. Pinaagi sa lisensyado o qualified optometrists nga maoy mo prescribe sa eksaktong kagamitan o kung primary eye care ang paghisgutan. Duaw lang silang buhatan sa 3636 sa Nicolas Street, Surigao City ug adunay ilang extension office sa Aurelianida Street, Cantilan, Surigao del Sur. Ayaw kalimti higala, AG Buñuel Optical Clinic. Ang AG
Boniel Optical Clinic. Doon na branch dito sa lungsod sa Dapa sa may Lupis Haina Street, Poblasyon Dapa, Surigao del Norte. Ang AG Boniel Optical Clinic dinhi sa syudad ng Surigao. No transfer na sa bagong location sa Nicolas Street Ragyahapon, tapad sa Garcia Hotel at bang sa Unicity. Ang Riverside Parts Master Incorporated na sa ilang bagong location sa Dalan, Burgos, ning atong syudad. Mahimo niyong tawagan sa telephone number 231-7478 or 826-3663. Mga produkto nga inyong mapalit, genuine, Makita Power Tools sama sa planer, drill, grinder, Triton Paints, construction supplies, angle bars, flat bars, GI pipes, automotive spare parts, Firefly electrical devices sama sa switches, bulbs ug outlets. Adto ang Riverside Parts Master Incorporated sa ilang bagong pwesto sa Dalan, Burgos ning syudad. Makahangyo ka o makabarato pagyod diha sa Riverside Parts Master Incorporated.
Aniya na ang food supplement nga kumpleto, sakto o aprobado. Ang Calabo Plus Herbal Capsule. Calabo Plus Herbal Capsule. Maayo alang sa pag-maintain sa imong maayong panglawas, kahimsog o katiskay sa mga pamati. Calabo Plus Herbal Capsule. Mupakusog sa enerhiya o stamina. Mupalikon sa imong immune system. Calabo Plus Herbal Capsule. Andam sa pagpakingbatok sa mga nagkadaiyang balatian. Musulay pabaka sa uban, diri na kita sa kasaligan. Calabo Plus Herbal Capsule. Calabo Plus Herbal Capsule. A quality product of Jesser Marketing. Mapalit na karon sa mga butika.
EXL Makabuhay Plus Dietary Supplement. Nakakatulong iwasan ang iba't ibang uri ng sakit tulad ng diabetes, arthritis, rheumatism, hypertension, cancer, urinary tract infections o UTI, respiratory tract infections tulad ng ubo, sipon, lagnat, heart attack, constipation, fatigue, kidney, lung problem, premature aging, memory loss at depression. EXL Makabuhay Plus Dietary Supplement. Buhay at makulay ang buhay sa EXL Makabuhay.
EXL Makabuhay Plus Dietary Supplement. Mapalit sa pinakadool nga butika o drugstore sa inyong lugar.
O, anyari sa'yo? Ba't nakasimangot ka? Alam ko na. Masakit ang katawan mo, ano? Sa sobrang trabaho? O di kaya masakit ang ulo sa sobrang stress? Break ka muna. Hinga ng malalim at imasahe ang ulo mo gamit ang Herbalaya Liniment Oil. Ako rin ganun eh. Kaya pag mataas ang tensyon sa trabaho, mag-Herbalaya break ka muna.
Herbalaya Liniment Oil. Amoy na kaaya-aya. Sa bawat pahid ay ginhawa.
I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez and welcome back to MedTalk Health Talk on CNN Philippines. When we sweat, it keeps our body cool as it evaporates from the skin. So it's actually part of the normal process of our body which keeps us healthy. If we didn't sweat, we'd overheat. But there's such a thing as excessive sweating even without much physical activity or hyperhidrosis, and it can affect a person's physical as well as their mental health. Now, Dr. Melissa, let's talk about the mental aspect of this. So for someone with hyperhidrosis, you mentioned an example earlier of on the corporate world, it's somewhat unnerving to be sweating at different forms, especially in meetings and whatnot. Since the primary hyperhidrosis mainly occurs in the armpits, the face, the soles, the palms, mainly emotional areas when we sweat, as what was mentioned earlier by Dr. Allen. Is there an emotional component to this? Can someone who is excessively anxious have hyperhidrosis?
Actually, that's one of the causes of the primary hyperhidrosis because of stress. Unlike the secondary hyperhidrosis, there is an underlying medical condition. Stress can really cause sweating. But in order for you to say that there is hyperhidrosis, there's like a criteria that at least you should have hyperhidrosis for at least 6 months. And then they experience hyperhidrosis like once a week, and it really affects their quality of life.
Now, Dr. Allen, ang taong tinatawag na pasmado, is that a case of hyperhidrosis?
Well, in layman's term, yes. Kasi that's our usual way of saying na pasmado, they have hyperhidrosis, palmoplantar or on the palms, no? So they say they're pasmado because they have wet hands.
Let's talk about one of the main focuses of this, which causes the undue embarrassment when they're in social situations. Dr. Allen, does hyperhidrosis happen 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to someone who is affected by it?
Actually, there will be certain instances, maybe several times a day or maybe at night. So it depends on the condition, but it's usually they're awake. It's an emotional stimulation, they're awake. It doesn't really happen when they're, sleeping. So that is for secondary naman. But for the primary, the interesting to note is they're always awake and there's an emotional stimuli that will actually activate the sweating process.
Dr. Melissa, when it comes to primary hyperhidrosis, it can happen early on in children. And of course, this can be very unsettling, not just for the child who is affected by hyperhidrosis, but for the parents as well. Now, for a parent who may think that their child may have hyperhidrosis, is probably being teased, bullied in class, what advice can you give to the parent? Is this something that their child will grow out of over time, or will it just progressively become more and more evident?
Hopefully they could consult us because there's really a treatment that we can help them with, no? Even like a topical, like for children, we can just apply like aluminum hydrochloride as one of the treatment. That's like a baseline that you can let them try.
Dr. Melissa, when it comes to children who might be affected by this condition, what are some of the signs that the sweating that they are experiencing is not just normal sweating, but it is already hyperhidrosis?
Now you have to really differentiate, as what we explained with Dr. Allen. There are really two types, no? The primary and the secondary. So if you try to see first if it's because of stress, that you can categorize that as primary. But if you can see other from the medical history by just talking to the child and you can see other signs and symptoms, then you try to consider there might be actually a secondary problem. There might be underlying medical illnesses, like for example, thyroid. Then you try to look away from the hyperhidrosis and try to see a medical problem that can actually cause the sweating.
Dr. Allen, when it comes to the correct diagnosis of hyperhidrosis, is a proper history and physical exam enough, or are there actual tests that measure the amount of sweat being released that determines someone to have primary or secondary hyperhidrosis?
For the primary, there's a certain category, more than 6 months, and then there's always profuse sweating, especially on the axillary area. And then there is what we call the iodine starch testing. But then I don't really, it's purely medical and the history. I base purely medical and the history. And then if you have any suspicions on medications or current medications or the medical history, then we can start doing laboratory examination just to test if there is diabetes or, as what I've mentioned, hyperthyroidism that will be causing the profuse sweating.
So excessive sweating from hyperhidrosis can lead to a lot of serious problems, especially with your confidence when in a social setting. More on this when we return. Your health is our mission here on MedTalk Health Talk. You're watching CNN Philippines.
Maayong balita sa tanan sa atong panginahanglan sa panimalay, mga gamit, ingon man mga dekorasyon, pwede na natong mapalit diha sa Wellington Bazaar. Anausab sa Wellington Bazaar ang mga bestidahon, karsunison, plain t-shirt, plastic chair, floor mat, mantel, banig, folding bed, habol, mosketero, trapal, lideret, basketball, stuffed toys ug mga dulaan sa bata. Ang Wellington Bazaar ana magalagad kanato sa dalan Kaymo ning Dakbayan sa Surigao. Wellington Bazaar, gikan sa mga kawani ug tigdumala sa Wellington Bazaar. Mayong adlaw alang kaninyo. Wellington Bazaar, sukiyon ta sa kanunay.
Uy, Day! Naunsa man ka, Day?
Day, kanang glisod na mo kakita, Day. Uy!
Sus, naunsa ba ka? Uy nga, katong ni aging bulan. Okay pa man ka? Naunsa di karon?
Laot siguro ni si unit aning cellphone kanang si computer, Day.
Da, mo lagi na akong ingon ba? Uy, Day, nakoy balita para sa imuha. Gamit og Lutein Plus, uy!
Lutein Plus?
Oo, tungod ang Lutein Plus, Day, duna kini 13 ka-ingredients. Hindi lang kini para sa mata, kundi sa imuhang tibuok lawas. Nga maka-assist pod sa imuhang anxiety o depression.
Ang Lutein Plus, usa ka award-winning brand nga gikan pa sa New Zealand.
The award-winning supplements from Clean Green, New Zealand Omega Plus support sa heart and blood system. Ang Lutein Plus ay 13 ka mga ingredients lakip ng vitamins A and C. Dili lamang kung maradyaw sa atong pananaw, nagsuporta sa bini sa ato intirulawas ning panahon nga jara kita kuman sa COVID-19 pandemic. Kinahanglan magpabilin kitang himsog inom sa Lutein Plus, Omega Plus and Primrose Plus Soft Gel. Inintanan available dia sa New Family Drug, Palma Drug sa Aquarian Pharmacy.
Pagdalaga o gulitaw na gani, kinahanglan limpyo ug hamis kanunay ang kutis. Gamit og Karisma Kojic Soap. Karisma Kojic Soap, pampahamis, pampaputi ug pampabata sa panit. Karisma Kojic Soap. Karisma Kojic Soap. Mao kini ang tubag alang sa mga teenager nga gusto makaangkon og nindot nga kutis. Karisma Kojic Soap. Karisma Kojic Soap. Karisma Kojic Soap. Karisma Kojic Soap. Ang sikreto sa mga gwapa o gwapo. Karisma Kojic Soap. Mabalit sa inyong mga suking butika.
Mga Surigaonon, ana-anay maayong lugar na adtuan ang Interior Hub Home Furnishing Shop nga nahimutang sa Dalan Borromeo ning Dakbayan sa Surigao. Anaa kanila ang barato ng mga gamit para sa pagpagwapa sa inyong banyo, kusina o tibuok balay. Nagtanyag sila sa mga packages, sa faucet, wash basin o toilet bowl with complete fittings na swak sa inyong budget. Sa Interior Hub Home Furnishing Shop, daghan kay kapilian, mga bagong mga designs o dekalidad ang mga produkto. Interior Hub Home Furnishing Shop, Borromeo Street, Surigao City. Owned and managed by Earl Brian Palma. Contact number 0945 30-60648.
EXL Makabuhay Plus Health and Wellness for God's Glory.
Nakay pasyente ma'am no imong isuon o sa gibati ato ma'am.
Ang gibati ato niya dok iskalihok yung mga lawas, ang ulo lang makalihok kamot dili wala na di nakadaw yung lawas bugak na nakaayo mandi maasay ang tiil. Makabuhay plus lang jud tuloy-an sa Ginoo. Samtod nakalakaw na di siya dok. Primero ina niya pero hinga na diya pamati mga lihok na pagkatudis makakaon na siya makagulit na kasara. Makabuhay plus lang jud kaluy-an sa Ginoo Dios. Interesting ito ayan na namo nakakita ni ani sa mong balay na nagmotor na jud.
Sige pangalan nimo ma'am?
Charlene po, Tagaturin.
Makabuhay! EXL Makabuhay Plus Dietary Supplement. Mapalit sa pinakadool nga butika o drugstore sa inyong lugar.
O, anyari sa'yo? Ba't nakasimangot ka? Alam ko na. Masakit ang katawan mo, ano? Sa sobrang trabaho? O di kaya masakit ang ulo sa sobrang stress? Break ka muna. Hinga ng malalim at imasahe ang ulo mo gamit ang Herbalaya Liniment Oil. Ako rin ganun eh. Kaya pag mataas ang tensyon sa trabaho, mag-Herbalaya break ka muna.
Herbalaya Liniment Oil. Amoy na kaaya-aya. Sa bawat pahid ay ginhawa.
I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and this is Med Talk Health Talk on CNN Philippines. The effects of hyperhidrosis or excessive sweating run more than skin deep. They pose a number of health risks or health issues, especially mental ones. But more than that, anxiety and depression affect those who may have it, and it can interfere with their quality of life. Dr. Allen, let's talk about now how best to manage a situation like this. We were talking earlier about stress as being the #1 factor here. What is the main approach when it comes to someone who is affected with hyperhidrosis? Is it medication right away, or are topical treatment best first-line treatment here?
We start with the conservative treatment. #1 is the topical treatment, as what mentioned earlier by Dr. Dabao. If it does not work, then we can go into oral medications. And then my best treatment really, if especially in adolescents or more adult patients, is really intradermal injection of botulinum toxin. I'm very happy with this because it has dramatic effect, and usually it's kind of painful though because there's pricking sensation or the needle sensation. So we usually put a numbing cream few minutes before we do it, and then we inject. Now usually there's 80 to 90% no sweat, and it usually is maintained for about the longest is about 16 months.
How many sessions will it normally take to have acceptable results?
It's usually one time actually. Usually on the third day, they start feeling that there's really no sweat.
Is there a drastic change in the quality of life for your patients who have undergone the botulinum toxin injections to control their excessive sweating?
Yes, especially when those people who are in the media, sometimes when they put up their hands and there's like a sweat patch, it makes them embarrassed, especially in the national TV, So what they do is they have this and they feel very confident, even with, let's say, doing aerobics and all that, there's really not much patch on the armpits.
Now, Dr. Melissa, when it comes to lifestyle changes, are there changes in a person's diet or maybe daily activity that can affect or lessen the amount of hyperhidrosis that they may encounter?
I think it's more living a stress-free life that will decrease your hyperhidrosis than connection with food. But if ever, not unless the bromhidrosis, which is like an offense body odor, sometimes there's like a connection with food, like eating spicy food or curry and garlic.
Before we go, do you have any advice for our viewers who might be contemplating or maybe they do have hyperhidrosis and would like to seek treatment? I'll start first with Dr. Melissa.
Of course, if it becomes very bothersome and it actually affects the quality of life of the patient itself, especially children, they should definitely consult certified dermatologists to help them address their problem.
Dr. Allen, do you have any message for our viewers?
For those people suffering hyperhidrosis, profuse sweating, you have to seek consultation so that we can help you, so that there will be no embarrassment, to spare you, so that we can give enough advice and to have a better quality of life.
Then thank you so much for enlightening us on how to determine if someone does have hyperhidrosis as well as its types. Thank you so much, Dr. Melissa Pasion Dabao and Dr. Alan Aguinaldo Cabrera, for being with us today and sharing your expertise about this. And advice to our viewers, always seek your consult from a board-certified dermatologist. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and thank you for watching MedTalk Health Talk.